Welcome to my book talk about tornadoes. Today we are going to look at three books that talk about tornadoes. We're going to see how the lives of several people were changed on two different occasions. And we're going to look at another book that talks about tornadoes and the categories that they have and the damage that they can cause. So why don't we get started? Did you know that every year in the United States that tornadoes do about $400 million in damage and they kill about 70 people on average? I don't know about you, that's pretty astronomical for me. By studying tornadoes, we learn more about them and we can help people in the path of the storm get to safety in time. Today I have chosen three books that talk about tornadoes. The first one is called I Survived the Joplin Tornado 2011 by Lauren Tarshis. This book takes the reader back to the day that lives were changed and shares the story of Dexter James and how his life was changed. Dexter James almost loses his life by getting hit by a car, but is saved by his dog Zeke. This near-death experience introduces Dexter to Dr. Norman Gage. Dex is invited by Dr. Gage to go chase tornadoes, and that is his dream come true. After encountering a dangerous tornado, Dr. Gage is injured, and Dex ventures out on his own to look for his family. Looking through all of the carnage and the wreckage, it really seems like Dexter is looking for a needle in a haystack. This book will keep the reader on the edge of their seat because it is filled with suspense as well as action. It was a typical Sunday afternoon until the day that the sky turned dark and the wind began to howl. And then the sky exploded like a bomb. The tornado was 3/4 of a mile wide with winds that topped 200 miles per hour. It swept away houses and blasted the wreckage thousands of feet into the sky. It tore apart schools and sent stores crashing down on the people inside. That's really scary. Cars flew through the air and trucks turned into missiles. Century-old trees were ripped from the ground. Would life ever be the same for Dexter? I think we would have to get a sense of what that day must have been like as we read this historical fiction story. And I just want to share with you a few of the images that are in this book. Even though it's a chapter book, it does have some images in it. And that is Dexter and Dr. Gage, and they are shooting instruments up into the storm to get measurements on how the storm is forming and how the atmosphere is changing and that kind of thing. And when I read about the cars flying through the air and the trucks turning into missiles, I believe that this picture, this illustration, really gives a good view of what could have been going on in that time. The next book I want to share with you is another I Survived book. So right now I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. I want you to imagine you're in a time when there are no towns, no roads, and you don't see another person for miles. Suddenly you look up and the sky turns greenish black and the wind starts to howl. And then you look over and you see it. Something roars to life and it's tearing across the land, shattering everything in its path. And your heart stops all of a sudden and you feel your blood run cold. And you wonder what it could be. So what happened in 1925 is we have the Tri-State tornado. And so Lauren Tarshis has also written this I Survived book. It's Tornado Terror. And it really talks about the Tri-State tornado, but it also unites another day also. It talks about the Joplin tornado as well. So we are back in 1925, and I can only imagine how scary this must have been. So this book tells the story of 11-year-old Adrian Dillon, who lives in Parrish, Illinois. And it also, later in the book, it talks about Ethan and Bennett Satterley. Both of these stories revolve around a destructive tornado. And it really tells the story of survival and community and that kind of thing. So the Tri-State tornado is actually considered one of the deadliest tornadoes in history, only to come 86 years later, the Joplin tornado would also shake the earth with power once again. Adrian Dillon thought that March 18th, 1925 was just another day to do his chores and then go to school until he saw the monster storm descend from the sky. Taking shelter in the school, Adrian and his friends were much luckier than others were in that tornado that day. And then you fast forward 86 years later, and on May 22nd, 2011, all the Satterley brothers, Ethan and Bennett, all they could think about was Bennett's birthday party that day, and they didn't know what lies ahead. They didn't know what would lay ahead. The day would change their lives forever. The sky suddenly turned, and the Satterleys took shelter in their basement, and then their lives would be changed forever. So lives were not only changed through the destruction at the same time, but they were also brought together as they began to pick up the pieces and start to rebuild. In Tornado Terror, it gives great information that the reader would find unbelievable that anyone could survive such a ferocious storm. And we know by studying the tornadoes from the tri-state tornado as well as the Joplin tornado that some of the cities and towns were almost wiped away from the map. So we know that studying tornadoes has advanced so much since the tri-state tornado, and meteorologists have dedicated their lives to learning more about how these storms form as well as other factors that go into these storms so that they can get warning time sooner so that people can get into the shelter in time. So like I did the first book, I want to share some of the illustrations out of this book with you as well. I think the author really has put a really good touch on these books with the illustrations to coincide with what it's talking about, and especially with the destruction that it talks about. So this is 1925, and so this is some of the destruction that you see, and I can only imagine, how these people are feeling. They have a sense of hopelessness maybe, because what all they have worked for is just all of a sudden gone in a matter of minutes. And so this is another example of a tornado that can wipe everything clean. You see some houses that were touched, but not quite as bad as some others there. I like that this book actually gives some statistics on the 1925 tornado. And then you have the Joplin tornado. I can only imagine seeing that and knowing that it could be heading for my community. What a scary time. What a scary time. The third book I want to share with you today is called Tornadoes, and it's by Gail Gibbons. Gail Gibbons is known for having text that is very clear and easy to understand, as well as vibrant illustrations. And this book actually is very informational. It takes the reader through the formation of a tornado as well as each classification of intensities and the damage that the tornadoes cause. The sky, as we know, can change in an instant in areas prone to tornadoes. Often there is rain, hail, lightning, thunder, and high winds that are associated with these storms that produce tornadoes. In 1971, Theodore Fujita founded a system that measured the intensity of tornadoes based on the damage that the tornado left behind. And then it was enhanced in 2007, so now instead of it just being the Fujita scale, it's the enhanced Fujita scale. Tornadoes are prominent in the area known as Tornado Alley, and this area stretches from South Dakota to North Texas. These books are a really great way to introduce the I Survive series to both reluctant readers as well as avid readers. And Tornadoes is a great book to use for projects about tornadoes because it contains so much detailed information. Tornadoes not only have the capability to change the landscape, but they often change lives of those who are affected as well. So before we go on, I would like to show you some of these awesome illustrations that Gail Gibbons has included in this book. So this is actually showing the formation of a storm that's going to produce a tornado. And it has the green and red arrows that show the airflow of what it takes to consider this to make the storm produce a tornado. And here you can see how the winds are swirling. So it really gives a good idea of how a tornado can form. And then she moves into showing the damage of what a tornado can do. So that was an EF1 tornado. And look at the difference in an EF4 tornado. So much damage. And then an EF5 tornado, where places are really wiped away. Houses are torn from their foundations. And so this is where Tornado Alley is. Oops. It's located. And I really appreciated what Gail Gibbons did at the end of the book. She really included what you should do in case of a tornado, places you can take shelter, and what to do after. And also at the end, a few fun facts, or not so fun because they're tornadoes. So such a great informational book to use, and I've had actually some students that have been doing projects about tornadoes as well, and so they would really enjoy that. So these 3 books, they all tell the story of how a ferocious monster can turn the world upside down in just a matter of minutes. In I Survived the Joplin Tornado 2011, the author creates such a gripping story that places you right in the middle of Dexter's situation. And Lauren Tarshis also shows us that no 2 tornadoes are the same in tornado terror, and illustrating how the Tri-State tornado and the Joplin tornado were different. So we know that no 2 are the same. And Gail Gibbons has taken research about tornadoes, and she both explains and illustrates it in a way that is easy for young children to understand in her book entitled Tornadoes. Thank you so much for sitting with me in my book talk today, and I hope you enjoyed it and have a great day. Thank you.